It's 11:14 on a Sunday night and you're lying in bed doing the math again. Not because anything went wrong. Nothing went wrong. You're just lying there in the dark running the same numbers you ran last Sunday and the Sunday before that. Halal mortgage from guidance, car payment, kids' Sunday school tuition, the halal grocery bill that keeps creeping up, the hedge fund you're supposed to be building, the zakat anniversary that's 6 weeks away, and you're not sure if you'll actually have the liquidity to discharge it cleanly this year. You know the answer. You've known the answer, but you keep running the math anyway because the alternative is accepting that this is just what life feels like now for a Muslim who did everything the right way. Meanwhile, the brother at the masjid, same street, bought his house around the same time. Similar diminishing musharaka contract, not some wildly different income. Woke up last Tuesday and decided to take the week off. No crisis, no email to his manager. He just didn't feel like going in, so he didn't. And here's the thing, he's not richer than you. He paid off his halal mortgage 3 years ago. He's just not doing that math anymore. My name is Omar and I spend way too much time thinking about why two Muslims with almost identical situations can end up living completely different lives. Today we're going to talk about something the halal finance industry wildly underexplains. What actually happens to your money, your career, your brain, and your baraka the moment you make that last diminishing musharaka payment. By the end of this, that Sunday night math problem is going to look very different because nobody tells you when you're 12 years deep into a 30-year halal mortgage. You don't just lose a bill when it's paid off, you lose a contract you'd stop noticing you were carrying, and you exit a structure that even its scholarly supporters allow only under necessity. Let's start with the numbers because the math here is more brutal than most Muslims realize. The average US monthly mortgage payment in 2025 hit $2,329. For someone who bought a halal financed home at current profit rates, the all-in monthly closer to $2,900. Once you add the guidance residential LLC fee, property taxes, and insurance, the median US Muslim household after taxes is taking home somewhere around $5,400 a month, less in the income bands where 35% of our community lives per ISPU 2025 data, which means on a median income, a halal mortgage is consuming 43% to 53% of disposable income before you've bought a single grocery, made a single car payment, or set aside $1 for zakat. The threshold every financial professional agrees on is 28%. Most halal mortgage holders are walking 15 to 25 percentage points over the limit for 30 years. Congratulations. You are technically a functioning Muslim adult who has also agreed to be financially strangled in slow motion until 63, with a contract whose underlying permissibility scholars still debate. Here's what that looks like. Meet the cons. Dual income combined $110,000 a year. After federal taxes, state taxes, FICA, and a modest 401k contribution they hope is going somewhere reasonable inside the default fund, they're taking home around $6,800 a month. Halal mortgage on their $380,000 house through guidance diminishing musharaka, $2,450. Property taxes, $380. Homeowners insurance, $200. Maintenance reserve, $320. That's $3,350 just to legally occupy the building. They've got $3,450 left. Two car payments because they both commute and one was financed through a halal auto product, $800. Car insurance, $240. Gas, $280. Student loans they refinance through a Sharia compliant program but still pay monthly, $550. Health insurance premiums their employer only partly covers, $380. Halal groceries with a Zabia premium, $850. Utilities and comms, $420. That's $3,520. We're already negative $70 and we haven't touched Sunday school tuition for 2 kids, the masjid donation they want to make monthly, the sadaqah they were brought up giving weekly, the hajj fund they keep saying they'll start, or the zakat reserve they should be auto-funding every payday. The cons are not irresponsible. They've never been to Dubai, they don't have a boat, they're not lavish at aid, they are two professional US Muslims who did everything they were supposed to do. They worked the high-effort degrees, took the salaried jobs, screened employers as much as possible for prayer room availability, and signed a halal contract with one of the recognized US providers because doing it the right way mattered to them. And every single financial decision they make, every career conversation, every request for flexibility, every time one of them thinks about going back to school or starting something on the side, gets filtered through one silent question. Can we still cover the guidance payment? That question is running in the background of their lives like a tab they can never close. Now let's talk about what actually frees up when the halal mortgage is gone. When the payment disappears, you don't suddenly have the full amount to invest. Property taxes, insurance, and maintenance still exist. For a $400,000 paid-off home, that's roughly $838 a month in ongoing costs. If your halal mortgage all-in was $2,900, you freed up around $2,000 a month in real deployable money. If you take that $2,000 and put it into a Sharia-screened equity portfolio like HALAL, SPUS, SPSK, or a Wahed-managed account earning the historical average of around 7 to 8% annually, here's what happens. In 5 years, $146,000. In 10 years, $365,000. In 15 years, $693,000. In 20 years, $1,177,000. You contributed $480,000 of your own money over those 20 years. The screened market contributed $697,000 on top, more than you put in yourself. The majority of your eventual halal wealth came from compound returns, not from working harder. This is the part of the halal mortgage payoff story nobody tells you in the guidance sales seminar. Now, before I keep going, I need to address the argument a certain type of brother in the comments is already drafting. The argument is, Nick, if my halal profit rate is below 5%, I'm mathematically better off investing the extra money in screened equities than prepaying the financier's share. The argument isn't wrong. Wharton's Michael Roberts ran the numbers on a $500,000 conventional mortgage at 3% and found that investing excess payments outperformed early payoff in roughly 95% of historical 30-year windows. A guaranteed 3% return from killing debt loses to a historical 8% return from equities. About 82% of existing mortgage holders have rates below 5%. So if that's you and your halal contract was locked in pre-2022, the spreadsheet says invest the difference. Here's what the spreadsheet doesn't know. It assumes you actually invest the difference. Most Muslims don't. They spend it. The halal mortgage payment was forced savings. When it disappears and gets replaced by discretionary cash, a meaningful share of households absorb it into lifestyle creep within 18 months. The spreadsheet also assumes you have the psychological fortitude to watch your screened portfolio drop 40% in a market crash while you still owe $2,500 a month on a contract some scholars consider structurally riba adjacent. There's a Muslim-specific consideration on top. Some respected scholars treat halal mortgage products as permissible only under necessity, darura. If that's where your scholar lands, then exiting the contract earlier is not just a financial optimization, it's a deen-aligned outcome that no spreadsheet can price. None of this is a ruling, run it past your scholar. At halal profit rates above 7%, which is most people who close since 2022, aggressive payoff becomes a very competitive guaranteed return that's hard to argue against on either ledger. Between 4.5% and 7%, it's a genuine judgment call. Below 4.5%, the math leans toward investing the difference, but only if you'll actually invest it and not let it quietly become better halal takeout habits. The real answer isn't a rate, it's knowing yourself and your scholar's framing. Let me go to the psychology research because there's something here the halal finance world breezes past. A 2019 study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences tracked what happened to people when their debts were eliminated, not reduced, eliminated. Anxiety dropped from 78% of participants showing clinical symptoms down to 53%. That's a 25-point reduction in diagnosable anxiety. People made better decisions. They became measurably less impulsive. But here's the finding that stopped me cold. The number of debt accounts closed mattered more than the dollar amount of relief. Closing a $3,000 credit card produced more psychological improvement than getting a $5,000 debt partially reduced. The brain doesn't care about the dollar amount. It cares about the open tab. For most practicing Muslims who fought their way through riba credit cards, car payments, and student loans, the halal mortgage is the last open tab, the last contract humming in the background, the last thing some scholars say, well, under necessity about. When it closes, the refrigerator you'd stopped hearing finally goes quiet. The 5 times daily prayer feels different. The zakat math is suddenly trivially clean because there's no contested debt offsetting your wealth in the calculation. Northwestern researchers separately found that carrying high debt to asset ratios correlates with measurably higher blood pressure, higher rates of depression, and worse self-reported health even after controlling for income. This isn't a metaphor. The halal mortgage is not just a financial obligation, it's a physiological one. Your body has been carrying it. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part I think about most. When the Khan's halal mortgage disappears, let's say they aggressively paid off the diminishing musharakat year 22 instead of year 30, which is absolutely achievable through bi-weekly payments and modest extra principal contributions. Their monthly expense floor drops by $2,000. In fire math, which is just the formula that says you need 25 times your annual expenses to be financially independent, eliminating $24,000 a year in mandatory costs reduces their financial independence number by $600,000. They haven't earned more money, they haven't gotten a promotion or launched a side business yet. They've just changed what survival costs, and that number determines everything because fire math is the same whether you're calculating in dollars or thinking about it as how many years until you can step back and teach at the Islamic Center without worrying about income. When your monthly survival requires both incomes running at full capacity, neither person can afford to leave a job they hate, take a pay cut to do something meaningful inside the deen, start a halal business that needs 18 months to break even, ask for Jummah flexibility that's never been offered, or do anything that might threaten the income that feeds the financier. You are financially indentured. The halal mortgage is a 30-year employment contract you signed without realizing it, and the wrapper doesn't change that. So what does the Khan's life look like at year 22? Halal mortgage gone, Mrs. Khan stops running every career conversation through the question of whether this job is stable enough to cover the payment. She takes the role at the Islamic school district even though it pays less because they can afford the difference now and the work aligns with her values. Mr. Khan starts the halal meal prep business he's been talking about for years because one bad quarter no longer means losing the house. They're not rich, their income didn't change, their decisions did because the math did. A brief moment of honesty. The house isn't actually free once the halal mortgage is paid off. Property taxes aren't going anywhere. They've gone up 27% nationally since 2019. Homeowners insurance has jumped 52% since 2020. The 1% annual maintenance rule, which on a $400,000 home is $333 a month, still applies. Add it up and your paid-off home still costs roughly $838 a month nationally, closer to $1,300 in high-tech states. Plan for the real number. The gap between I thought I'd have $2,900 and I actually have $2,000 is exactly the size of a November property tax bill that will ruin your week if you weren't expecting it. About 40% of US owner-occupied homes are now mortgage-free, an all-time high. The demographics tell a story. 63% of homeowners 65 and older are mortgage-free versus fewer than 28% of working-age homeowners. The average age of payoff is 58 to 63. Meanwhile, the median first-time buyer age just hit 36, often older in our community since many Muslims spend years saving cash to avoid riba or to qualify for halal contracts. A 30-year halal mortgage from 36 doesn't end until 66. In 1989, 3% of homeowners over 80 still had a mortgage. Today, nearly a third do. The share of 65 to 79-year-olds still carrying mortgages went from 24% to 41% in 30 years. Median mortgage debt among seniors is up 400%. We are dragging housing contracts into retirement at a scale that has never happened before, and our community is overrepresented in the late buyer demographic because of the time it takes to save and qualify within the halal frame. Only 23% of all Americans are completely debt-free. No mortgage, no car payment, nothing. So what we're talking about today is genuinely rare. Rare enough that when Muslims cross that finish line, they consistently report something they couldn't have predicted. It's not just relief, it's a kind of silence they didn't know was missing, and a clarity in salah that's hard to articulate before you felt it. So how do you actually accelerate this? On a $450,000 financed amount at a 6.5% halal equivalent profit rate, your standard monthly is $2,844. Over 30 years, your total payments approach $1.02 million. Sit with that. You will pay more in profit equivalent over the life of the contract than the house initially cost. It's a beautiful business model if you're the financier. Bi-weekly payments, cutting your monthly in half and paying every 2 weeks results in 13 full payments per year instead of 12. That single change cuts 5 to 6 years of the contract and eliminates over $119,000 in profit equivalent cost. Throwing an extra $500 a month at the financier's share shortens the timeline by about 8 years and kills $150,000 in cost. An extra $1,000 a month nearly halves the contract term to 17 years. None of these are heroic sacrifices. They're the difference between paying off your halal mortgage at 55 versus 63 and the life you get to live at 55 with no contract versus the one you're living at 63 waiting for it to end. Before you ramp prepayments, check your specific contract. Some halal contracts have different prepayment treatments than conventional mortgages. Guidance Residential's diminishing musharaka typically accepts extra payments toward the buyout component without penalty, but get this confirmed by your contract specialist and your scholar. So let's land this. What do you actually do on the day the last diminishing musharaka payment processes? First, verify the financier filed the deed release and you've received the title. This is the most boring sentence in the video and also the most important one to remember because financiers occasionally just don't file it and you find out 3 years later when you try to sell. Second, before you redirect a single dollar, rebuild your halal emergency fund. You've been house poor for years. Your reserves are almost certainly thinner than they should be. Get 6 to 12 months of your new lower expenses in a non-interest bearing account before you do anything ambitious. Then deploy the former payment in order. Max the 401k match first, ideally into a self-directed brokerage account per Joe Bradford's framework so you can hold HALAL, SPUS, or screened individual stocks. Max the Roth IRA, $7,000 in 2025, grows completely tax-free and zakat clean on the back end. Max the 401k contribution limit, $23,500 inside screened holdings. Fund an HSA if you're eligible and self-direct it into screened ETFs. Put everything remaining into a halal taxable brokerage account. Open a separate zakat reserve bucket that autofunds 2.5% of your incremental zakatable wealth growth every payday, so Ramadan never catches you short. If you're redirecting $2,000 a month through all of these at 7 to 8%, you're at $365,000 in a decade and $1.17 million in 20 years. Not because you did anything clever, because you survived the halal mortgage, closed the last contested tab, and finally gave compound returns the room to do what they were always going to do if you just got the financier out of the way. Here's what I actually want you to take from this. The halal mortgage wasn't just a large bill, it was a permission slip you had to silently ask for every time you wanted to do something different. Want to leave a job you hate? Check the mortgage. Want to start something risky? Check the mortgage. Want to take a pay cut to teach at the masjid full time? Check the mortgage. For most Muslims, for most of their adult lives, the halal mortgage is the invisible hand shaping nearly every major decision. When it's gone, the grip releases. As always, the math is the math. The scholarly views on halal mortgage products and on early payoff genuinely differ, and your final ruling on diminishing musharaka, prepayment treatment, and whether to prioritize investing, the difference versus killing the contract, has to come from a scholar you trust who knows your specific situation. The Sunday night math you've been running in the dark, you're not going to run it forever. The people who get to stop running it the earliest aren't the ones who earn the most. They're the ones who understood what the finish line was actually worth and ran toward it on purpose.